but we've always been civil to each other when we disagree. I know that you try your best in the Senate to be that way towards Dr. Fauci, but I want to go back to last week, but I want a predicate first. Am I not correct that you were on the baseball field when the Bernie Sanders supporter tried to kill you and dozens of other Republicans?
Absolutely. I was 10 feet from one of the staffers who was shot. I was about 20 yards from Steve Scalise. And the remarkable thing is that not one of us said it was Bernie Sanders' fault. And people almost died. It was a horrific thing. The guy came there with a list of people to kill, to assassinate. And yet Dr. Fauci now thinks that he can, come forward, and he's had a death threat. And so that death threat is because people object to him or disagree with him. I had 34 death threats last week. 34 that we referred to the Capitol Hill police. So, it's sort of, we don't want violence on Dr. Fauci. We want a civil debate. But the main reason that it devolves into a personal sort of attack back and forth is that he wouldn't answer the question. He deflects from the question. Not one person in the mainstream media realizes even what the question was that I asked him.
I don't know the question. I'm not legacy media. All I know is that it is absurd to blame anyone in public life for the fringe elements that inflict all of us with those kinds of. I mean, I've been in the media for 30 years. Of course, I've gotten those letters. I knew I wouldn't have imagined you had 34 in a week. That's kind of a record, Dr. Paul, isn't it?
I think it's a record for me, and it shows how inflamed the public is on both sides. But I also get hundreds of people every day who say someone has to ask these tough questions. The question I asked Dr. Fauci was, is it an abuse of office to use your $420,000 salary to go after your political enemies, your scientific opponents? Is it wrong to have sort of an enemies list of people that you and Dr. Collins basically conspire to ruin their reputations, not really in journals with facts or arguments, but in the lay press? They go to The Nation. They didn't go to Science. They went to the Nation, the progressive magazine, The Nation, to go after their opponents and then call them names. Their opponents teach at Harvard, Stanford, and Oxford, the three main authors of the Great Barrington Declaration. They went after them to smear them and to try to ruin their reputations. And I think that is just despicable, and it should be called out.
Dr. Fauci used to come on this show. And like with you, I have my disagreements, and they're always civilly expressed. But after I wrote a Washington Post column calling on him to resign, his office said he would never come back on my show. I think the phrase was, "Are you kidding?" after what you wrote. And Dr. Walensky has turned down time after time. Now, I talk to 6 million people every morning. How can a public health officer expect to influence public health when they don't talk to the public except on the Sunday shows, Dr. and Senator Paul?
Yeah, and see, my point is this, is as far as sort of vaccine hesitancy, I'm pro-vaccine. We helped to get my in-laws vaccinated. My wife's been vaccinated. But I'm also for discernment, and I'm also for freedom and freedom of choice. But the thing is there are a lot of people who are conservative who might listen to the show who are hesitant. They should try to convince us with facts and explain to us the discrepancies and then try to persuade us, and people will be open. I'm willing to tell people that there are advantages to getting vaccinated, but I'm also willing to be honest with them and tell you that it's malpractice to vaccinate your 10-year-old boy without knowing whether he's had COVID. I think it's absolutely malpractice, and I wouldn't do it. And I think if you don't individualize your care, if you say that an 80-year-old should be treated the same as a 10-year-old, you're not a physician. You're now sort of a bureaucrat just sort of wanting to universalize things because it's easier than thinking about the individual risks of the patient.
You just hit one of my red buttons, Doctor, because Dr. Senator, I like to say, because I have 3 grandchildren, all of whom are in elementary school or preschool. They've all had COVID. And my daughter has searched in vain for a word from CDC on when or if those children should receive a vaccine. They won't answer. They will not acknowledge that they do not know, and they won't be as blunt as you, which is don't do it.
And here's the thing is the facts are out there, and it's becoming more and more well known that there is a risk of myocarditis, particularly for boys. It's about 1 in 3,000 to 1 in 6,000 by some estimates. So that's infrequent, but that's much rarer than actually dying from COVID. For a child under 18 to die is about 1 in a million. So any honest parents would want to weigh those risks. It's even less dying from COVID or getting COVID if you've already had it. So really, people ought to be able to think, and they ought to be able to make the choices for their children without the government telling them what to do.
Now, we actually have, I believe it's beyond argument, that Dr. Fauci is an impediment to educating the American public about health risks. And God forbid if there were another biohazard now, if there was another public health crisis, no one would believe him, or the people that would believe him are 35% to 40%. Is that an acceptable status quo?
No, and I think the main reason I oppose him is not to win the argument, although I think we are winning the argument. The main reason I oppose him and keep going at him on the facts, particularly the origin of the virus, is we could get a much worse virus the next time there's a leak from a lab. This one has a 1% mortality, but that still means, 5, 6 million people died in the world. We could have a 15% mortality or a 50% mortality. People need to realize there was an op-ed in the Washington Post about 2 months ago by an MIT professor who I don't think is a Republican or a partisan, who said that this type of research is so risky that we are gambling with civilization. That's a pretty profound thing to do, and yet Fauci still continues to be an advocate of giving money to the Chinese, doing research for the Chinese, but also he's an advocate of creating viruses that don't exist in nature. I think it's foolhardy. I think it's very risky. And the main reason I continue to go after him is he has not acknowledged that he made a mistake, and he's not acknowledged that we should reassess at all doing this risky research.
The gain-of-function research conversation I had with him was misleading at best. Let me ask you about Dr. Walensky. I don't know if she's a Republican or Democrat. All I know is that she is not competent at messaging. She might be a fine doctor. My doctors are great, too. I'm not sure if they could ever do the Senate testimony or persuade anyone of anything. I just know they're good doctors. Have you come to the conclusion that Dr. Walensky should step down as well?
I haven't spent as much time there, mainly because I think there needs to be one focus where we focus, and there is really one person in charge of the pandemic, and that has been Dr. Fauci. I think the main complaint, like in the last hearing, was over whether there's enough testing. And I think people miss the boat a little bit. They're like, why can't the government make more tests? The question should be, or the acknowledgement should be, that socialism doesn't work. So it doesn't work in the economy, but it doesn't work in medicine. So if you put the government in charge of monoclonal antibodies, inevitably politics will enter into it, and they'll say, well, why are we sending them to deplorable people in Florida who are not vaccinated, who are Republicans? And so politics enters into distribution. But also socialism is just not very good at distributing things. The other thing is it's been bad advice from Dr. Fauci why there's a shortage of tests. If you talk to the Great Barrington Declaration people, they'll say that we should target people who are sick and who are vulnerable to help, that we shouldn't test everyone on the planet 3 times a week, and you shouldn't be testing people who are not sick. So the thing is we are wasting so many tests with bad advice, but then the socialist aspect of the production and the distribution being from the government will inevitably lead to shortages or surpluses.
That's well put. I want to stress the point for bringing you on today, which is that you don't encourage violence against anyone. Nobody does. That you talk to Bernie Sanders every day, though Bernie Sanders people try to kill you on the softball field. I need to turn to President Biden's disaster of a press conference yesterday. It will forever be the minor incursion press conference, but he was also incoherent on the COVID. What did you make of that? And by the way, congratulations on saving the filibuster last night. But what did you make of that press conference?
It's rambling and disjointed enough that it's really hard to get a coherent message out of it. I think really for the good of the country, because the thing about foreign policy, as I know you know, is there are things you say, there are things you do to try to influence other countries, and they are influenced by your public pronouncements. And in some ways, that's all you have. You have the threat of military might, but you also have the influence of what you say. So you can't be sending a muddled message or a message of, oh, well, it may not be too big a deal, if there's a Russian incursion. So I think that it's a mistake for him to be out in front. It's dangerous to the country, and I think we're stuck with him in all likelihood till 2024. And I think it would be good for the country for him not to speak and not to appear in public.
I agree. Last question, Senator Paul. Minor incursion. Do you think that category includes China swallowing Taiwan or Lithuania being taken over by Russia? What does that category include?
Well, I think it's just an awful statement for him to have made. And I think that I don't know that there's any way to sort of justify or pull it back. There are realistic expectations to what will happen in different various, areas of war around the world. But telegraphing exactly what's going to happen is not a great idea.
Senator Rand Paul, thank you for joining me. Always a pleasure. Keep coming back. I'll be right back, America, on the Hugh Hewitt